2017's corruption impressions are depicted on this map. The higher a country's ranking, from 1 to 180, the more corrupt it is. The chart shows that New Zealand, with a score of 90, is the country with the lowest level of corruption, followed by Singapore, with a score of 85. Corruption is worse in Somalia and Iraq than everywhere else in the world, with a total score of 20. In addition, countries with lower scores than the norm, such as Russia, Bahrain, and Jamaica, suffer from high levels of corruption. As a result, there is less corruption in North America, Europe, and Oceania. Data about the most popular smartphone brands in Australia can be seen on the graph. We can observe from the graph that Apple has the highest percentage of the total in 2009, with 55%. LG has the smallest percentage, 10%. On the graph, we can clearly see that Samsung holds a 42% share of the smartphone market in 2019. In Google, the smallest percentage is 10%. With Apple in 2019, we can observe that the percentage is 33%. Data about popular mobile phone brands may be found in this graph. In this graph, you can see how many fish are present in the water during the daylight and at night. There are just 4 fish in the water on the left when we gaze at it in the daylight. It's also a lot more vibrant, and the fish are gathering around the rocks to eat. We can tell it's nightfall since the water is darker on the right. We can also notice that there are a large number of fish grouped together in a shoal, tightly swimming with one another. Fishermen are more spread out during the day as they search for food, however at night they stay close to each other. The geological picture is of the Earth divided into 3D cross-sections. There are several layers shown in the picture with different color shades. The blue layer is called atmosphere, whereas just after that the layer is called crust. If we go even deeper, the mantle layer forms the middle portion of the Earth, and the innermost portion is made of the outer and inner core. There is also a triangle-shaped section that describes the layers in detail. The uppermost layer is labeled with oceanic crust and continental crust, followed by the upper mantle. The mantle runs further down to meet the outer core of the Earth. Overall, we can conclude that the Earth is made up of many layers of different sizes. Confidence in the economy was measured by a line graph from January 1990 through January 2008. Consumer confidence was at an all-time high of 85 in January 1990, before quickly falling to a low of roughly 67. Consumer confidence continued to climb and dip during the next years, peaking in January 2002 at 106. Although consumer confidence was once again at 67 in January 2008, the decline was severe and lasted throughout the year. The level of consumer confidence fluctuates constantly, with many peaks and valleys. The complex picture shows the total amount of water present on Earth. While 97.5% of water is salty, only 2.5% water is fresh water and thus potable. The image further mentions the sources of fresh water, which measures to 35 million cubic kilometer glaciers and permanent snow form 68.7%, groundwater 30%, and ground ice and permafrost 0.86% of total fresh water. Again, the portion of ground ice and permafrost has been divided into lakes, which are 26%, soil 0.5%, atmosphere 0.04%, wetlands 0.03%, rivers 0.006%, and finally plants and animals that are 0.003%. Overall, we can say that usable water is way too less in quantity and the sources are very limited. From April 2012 to March 2017, this bar graph shows the number of crimes committed per 100,000 people in Victoria. In 2012, there were 7,300 offences per 100,000 people, while in 2017, there were 8,824 offences per 100,000 people. There has been a minor increase in the number of offences over the past several years, with 2017 seeing the most. The procedure shows how to prepare for a broadcast on television, radio, or a recorded message. A satellite, radar, or a floating buoy in the water are used to acquire the first clues about what is going on. The buoy transmits a synoptic chart to a central computer, which then distributes information to the numerous broadcasts, while the satellite delivers a photo and the radar makes a radar screen. Before broadcasting, all information must first be transferred to a computer. The solar system is depicted in the following graph. This is a stunning image that conveys a lot of information. Jupiter is the biggest planet in this diagram, and it is brown in color. The second biggest planet, Saturn, may be seen in this graph, and its color is brown. Mercury is the smallest of the planets, followed by Mars, Earth, Venus, Neptune, and Uranus. Finally, this image is quite instructive. Comparing the percentage of U.S. subprime loans with the percentage of house owners from 1997 to 2007, this graph may be seen. In 1997, the subprime portion was just 7%. By 2006, it had risen to over 20%, and finally, in 2008, it fell to 8%. After progressively increasing from 65% in 1997 to 69% in 2004, the percentage of people who owned a house dropped to 68% in 2007. Overall, the percentage of subprime loans climbed over time and collapsed in 2007, but the percentage of homeowners stayed the same. For the years 1991 and 2007, the pie charts compare owning vs renting. Home ownership was the most prevalent kind of housing in 1991, accounting for about 60% of all homes, or more than half of all dwellings. The second largest sector was social rental housing, which accounted for over 23% of all houses, or almost one-third. The other dwellings were primarily privately rented, 11%, with just a small percentage being public housing, 6%. In 2007, the number of homeowners had climbed to 70%, or nearly 3/4 of all residences, after 16 years. In comparison to 1991, this was a 10% rise. At 11%, the share of privately rented residences had remained steady. Despite the same proportion, there were 5 million more dwellings in 2007 than in 1991, hence the number of rental homes grew. The graph displays which countries consume the most chocolate. The graph clearly shows that Switzerland has the highest figure, which is roughly 20 pounds. The graph clearly shows that Germany has the second highest amount, which is roughly 17 pounds. French citizens weigh an average of 9 pounds, which is clearly seen on the graph. According to the graph, we can clearly observe that the amount is about 10 pounds in Australia. Sweden has a figure of roughly 12 pounds, which we can tell by looking at it. Finally, the information in this graph pertains to the world's most voracious chocolate eaters. This is a map of the world displaying the forecast of the world GDP in 2016, measured in percent. It looks that Southeast Asia will have the biggest growth with 5.4%, while Latin America and Western Europe had the least growth of 0.6% and 1.8% respectively. Overall, Asia experienced the biggest increase, with Latin America having the least rise in GDP. It is clear that there are 5 distinct stages in this process, beginning with the capture of energy from sunlight. The final 2 steps show how domestic electricity is connected to the external power supply. At the first stage in the process, solar panels on the roof of a normal house take energy from the sun and convert it into DC current. Next, this current is passed through an inverter, which changes it to AC current and regulates the supply of electricity. At stage 3, electricity is supplied to the home from an electrical panel. At the 4th step shown in the diagram, a utility meter in the home is responsible for sending any extra electric power outside the house into the grid. Finally, if the solar panels do not provide enough energy for the household, electricity will flow from the utility grid into the home through the meter. Using the bar graph, you can see which nations have the most multinational 500 firms. At 130 and 90, respectively, these firms hailed from the United States and China. There are only approximately 10 of these firms in Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Canada, respectively. In general, the United States has the most businesses, whereas Canada has the least number of businesses. Data in millions of people is depicted on a line graph for Australia's future population. The series has risen substantially from 20 in 2001 to 65 in 2101. This is shown in the graph. Afterwards, from 2001 to 2001, the Series B has grown from 20 to 45. As a result, the number of Series C models has risen steadily from 20 to 35 during the same time frame. So to summarize, it is estimated that Australia's population will grow in the near future. Plan of a library as seen in the image above. Male and female restrooms are located adjacent to the elevator outside the library. In addition, there's a nearby walks through. There are 5 main divisions inside the library. There are 2 parts with the most content, Section 3 and Section 4, and Section 1. All in all, the design of this library might serve as an architect's rendering of a future institution. The picture is of a line graph on a rough scaled paper showing the product sales for 3 years. The x-axis is labeled with the years 2000, 2001, and 2002, whereas, on the y-axis, we have the units of product sales from 100 to 250 gallons. The 3 lines show snacks, food items other than snacks, and soft drinks as selling products. The food items are the only products that witnessed skyrocketing growth in selling from 200 to 250 gallons in those 3 years, whereas rest of the items that are snacks and soft drink initially surged in 2001 and then dropped in 2002. All in all, the given data reveals that food items are more popular as compared to snacks and soft drinks as far as selling is concerned. The bar graph depicts the number of fictitious books read per 1,000 persons, broken down by age and gender. According to statistics, there are around 95 young male adults participating in this, with approximately 45 young female adults. The number of teenage boys between the ages of 15 and 18 is fairly high, at 140, with adolescent girls following at around 105. Male children account for little more than 100, with female children accounting for 90. The phases in the project management process are depicted in this flowchart. There are 4 steps to this. Before any data can be saved in a data warehouse, a project's current state must be monitored. The time, costs, and purchases associated with the project are then documented and stored in a data warehouse. This is followed by the assignment of tasks and procedures, the revision of the project schedule, and the approval of checkpoints. Finally, meetings are held and documents such as agendas and minutes are distributed.